King Ahasuerus sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and should speak according to the language of his people. Esther chapter 2. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was pacified, he remembered Vashti, and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants that served to him, Let there be fair young virgins sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they gather together all the fair young virgins to Shushan of the palace, to the house of the women, to the custody of Hegai, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden that pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so. There was a certain Yehudi in Shushan of the palace, whose name was Mardochai, the son of Yair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benyamini, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives that had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Yehudah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel, had carried away. And he was bringing up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maiden was fair and beautiful. And when her father and mother were dead, Mardochai took her for his own daughter. So it was, when the king's command and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together to Shushan of the palace, to the custody of Hegai, that Esther was taken into the king's house, to the custody of Hegai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her her things for purification, with her portions, and the 7 maidens who were meet to be given her out of the king's house. And he removed her and her maidens to the best place of the house of the women. Esther had not made known her people nor her kindred, for Mardochai had charged her that she should not make it known. And Mardochai walked every day before the court of the women's house, to know how Esther did, and what would become of her. Now when the turn of every maiden was come to go into King Ahasuerus, after when it had been done to her, according to the law for the women, 12 months, for so were the days of their purifications accomplished, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet aromas, and with the things for the purifying of the women. Then in this way came the maiden to the king. Whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the women to the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Shaashgaz, the king's chamberlain, who kept the concubines. She came into the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and she were called by name. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mardochai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go into the king, she required nothing but what Hegai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tevet, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained favor and kindness in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head, and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast to all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast, and he made a release to the provinces, and gave gifts according to the bounty of the king. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mardochai was sitting in the king's gate. Esther had not yet made known her kindred nor her people, as Mardochai had charged her, for Esther did the command of Mardochai, like as when she was brought up with him. In those days, while Mardochai was sitting in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bagathan and Tarash, of those that kept the threshold, were wroth, and sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing became known to Mardochai, who showed it to Esther the queen, and Esther told the king thereof in Mardochai's name. And when inquisition was made of the matter, and it was found to be so, they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king.